y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is the awesome Cynthia Moore. She is an award-winning playwright, the author of Dancing on Coals, and she's now a mental health counselor. Can you say hi, Cynthia?
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, and I'm glad we connected. I think your background is wonderful, and it's going to be very helpful for this podcast, Real Things Living. It's really, as you know, about resilience and picking yourself up. And people, hopefully I'm correct. I don't think we're born with resilience. We
Mm.
have to adapt and learn dealing with challenges. I'm trying to use nice words. Um, so I think it's so cool that you were, a playwright, and you're also did acting as well, as my understanding, in the
Mhm.
theater. So what connected that theater with the psychotherapy that you went to later get into? What connected you to that?
Well, my memoir is the story of a life that had several different components to it. Specifically, there was quite a large pivot in midlife when I grew up with some degree of trauma, alcoholic parents, a lot of shouting and rage in the household, and it takes us a lifetime to overcome trauma. As you know, that's what resilience is all about. That's where we learn resilience, is how to manage the traumas in our life. And where trauma led me originally was to be in the theater, to be very extroverted, to be very expressive, to be in all masculine theater companies, to be very athletic, driven. And I thought that would give me the belonging that I sought, that I needed, that I didn't get from my family. And it turned out that it didn't. Surprise. often, often the first thing we look for doesn't. And if we have any wisdom or any resources at all, we'll look again and say, well, what am I really looking for? What do I really need here? And how do I get that? And so I did a major pivot in midlife and quit the theater and went back to school, got a degree in clinical psychology, became a therapist. And that was a way of turning inward, really tuning into myself, learning how to be with the pain of my childhood, learning how to accept myself and integrate those traumas and learn from them, and basically learn how to help other people face their traumas and integrate them and learn resilience for themselves, which has been an absolute blessing. And what a gift. What a gift to be able to work with people on that level.
It is as you're talking, it just resonates with me and so many people. We just a lot of it, trauma. If we experience it, we kind of suppress it and you're like you said on stage, and it brought back memories to me. I didn't want to go home, and that's why I got so involved with sports. Just right, and I was one of those athletic nerds. Is that the right word? But I had a lot of problems that not me, but with my parents, right? And that's kinda I look back on that like, why did I didn't wanna go home, Cynthia. You know what I'm saying? I found excuses. I gotta go do this. I am so busy, right? And that's kind of what I'm sure I'm not the only person that's dealt with that. And I'm fortunate that I learned from this. I I mean, it took a while.
Well, I'm sure excelling in sports gave you the self-esteem that you were longing for, right?
It was, and it also I knew, and then I had an opportunity to athletic scholarship at like Georgia Tech, and I said no because I knew the stress in college is not what the pressure they put on that's kind of what it was. And at the time, this was in the early '80s. That part of Atlanta, there's lots of uh, crime and rapes going on, and so that was another thing. No, and they were trying to bring in more girls into athletics, teams in college back then. I think that was after Title IX was passed. But again, I'm so thankful I listened to my gut. You know what I'm saying? I should say gut, my instincts. But
Yeah.
everybody has that. But then I'm like, then I didn't want to have that even though I did it, use it as an escape, I didn't want to have that more external pressure on me, right?
Exactly.
That's kind of
Exactly.
how I felt it, and you had to find your way. And I still run to the day, but I don't. But I do it for fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never been on like was doing theater like you because that probably would have been good too. But then that was just another thing I couldn't put on my calendar. But
Right.
I think it's so it to me. You mentioned the theater. It's kind of like going into someone else's mind, right? When you're acting, maybe that's what kind of what it was, right?
It is. It's going into someone else's mind. It's also the kind of theater I did was really physical. There was an extreme physical training component. So it was
Oh,
more
wow.
like dance, movement, acrobatics. And so there was a level of excellence that I could achieve, which you had in athletics also. There's a level of excellence. You know when you're doing it well. And for someone who is deprived of the kind of affirmation that they need as a child, we long for that affirmation. And to do something where you know what excellent looks like, it's very satisfying
It,
because you can get it.
yeah. Back then, but being a female back then,
Yeah.
your expectations were like astronomical compared to the men. And I think as you're talking, yeah, I did do dancing by the way too in college. Because
Uh-huh.
it rather than but that was for fun. I did it as a part of a dance troupe rather than I thought that was more fun and then running for somebody, right? So it's you have to do it for you. And I
You
think
have
that
to do.
in that is something that I know I just think embrace your creativity in a way kind of helps.
Definitely. And you have to, what I love is that you said you followed your gut, you followed your instinct. And I think that's so key because I think as women, we have to learn how to listen to ourselves because we're trained to be caretakers. We're trained to be tuned into everybody around us. We're trained to figure out what the emotional temperature in the room is and how to deal with that. And so learning how to listen in to ourselves is a skill that many women have to really work to achieve. It's not, it doesn't come easily to us.
Some people think it's cheesy,
Uh,
right? And I don't think it is. I'm not saying I've listened to my instincts all the time, but I just knew there was a major point in my life going into, the next phase. I was out of high school. Right, that's really what it was. And I didn't mention this but before. It should be about you, but my father that raised me, my mom was married 3 times by the time I was 17. All military guys. So you can imagine the attitude I had, right?
yeah,
And so they're all very masculine, which was nice in a way. But I think that's what I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I keep up with all this stuff? That
exactly.
and I was probably what's the word? Talking bad to myself too, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told you're a girl, you could do anything that you want. That's what my stepfather told me. But but then it was still putting up here the level. I think we're that generation. I'm the generation X, older one. So I'm sure you've heard about all these generations. So we all have different experiences. We shouldn't label ourselves, but we kind of were sandwiched into we joke that we were sandwiched, and a lot of us people think we don't care. Generation X's, we do care.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that you were trying to keep up with this masculine ideal. And
Yes,
and what a paradox. You were told you could do everything, but then you were told to behave like a man. So
yes.
that's a contradiction, right? And we
Yeah,
have to
that's
figure that's not exactly helpful to us. And that's
no.
what I did the first half of my life. I tried to keep up, I tried to fit in. You know, Brene Brown has this wonderful term where she says the opposite of belonging is fitting in, which means you cut off parts of yourself to fit in.
Yes.
And I think when we're trying to keep up with men or adhere to male standards, then we cut off parts of ourselves as women. And if we can take time to really say, okay, who am I? What am I good at? What do I love rather than these male standards that are passed down? And so for me, psychotherapy was a perfect example of that because it's really going inwards, it's getting tuned into your dreams, your psyche, your unconscious, And it's learning how to navigate that map with other people too. What's going on in your unconscious? What's troubling you? What do you struggle with? As you said, the challenges. So,
Yeah, it's everything. The business, corporation stuff I was in, I was the only woman who was not a secretary, right?
uh,
But
oh,
so I kind of think in a way, my background helped me stand up to those men.
yeah, you got to learn that too.
I learned that so I was grateful for that. But at the same time, people don't realize that the younger generation of women don't realize what we had to, I mean, the stuff I was sexually, what's the word, harassed sometimes. I really was
I'll bet.
because the comments, the way I looked and stuff. And it's just like, really? Yeah. So, but they knew the look on my face. Okay, Bridget will beat you up. I'm just kidding. But I was, but I learned to just learn to not react in those situations.
Right,
That
right.
that's the best way to deal with it. Even it doesn't matter the situation, but I try to like, why are they talking to me this way? Because they have insecurities as well for some reason.
Right. And nobody was aware of anything in those days. Now, at least people are aware of it, and you can call them on it and you can say, that's what that feels like. And there's, oh, okay, I'll try to do
Right.
better. But in those days, no, there was no aware. You look at old movies and the way women are treated in old movies is,
It's shocking. I'm like, whoa, right? And there's just so many fun stories. I mean, I'm glad I had that experience, and I think that was one of the reasons I it was recommended. Like, you need to go to Bridget, you need to go act and all that stuff. But you're so good at talking. Blah blah. My again, my instincts say no because I knew what was happening to why they wanted me to do that. I just knew, all right, and
yeah, yeah. But
it's
resilience, your whole theme of your talk is resilience doesn't come without discomfort.
correct.
Resilience is a response to discomfort, right? It's learning how to navigate discomfort. And isn't that what we're trying to do in our lifetimes is learn how to navigate discomfort and be with it and learn from it and, make lemonade out of the lemons and
My mom
survive.
said that a
Not just,
lot.
yeah, she did.
I'm sure she had it much worse than me. Being, she was born in 1941 or something like in that era during World War II in Europe. You know what I'm saying? So she had it. Her experience was, I mean, she was an infant, but still, it was different. And she came to the States. So I'm thankful to have her as a good role model. But she was trying to survive, meaning that's why she had to marry a man to help support us.
She was born into trauma. She was born into a traumatized country.
Yes, she was, and my grandfather was in the French army, um, and the family, I mean, they survived, but the family lost, think about it, the French family lost everything,
Lost
um,
everything, and you inherit that legacy. It's passed on, that trauma.
and she probably brought it on to me, and then when I was born, though, I think I mentioned before we recorded, was I was born in between the Korean War and the Vietnam War, right? And my dad was in both, but I never really saw him because think about the trauma, all these, I didn't see him. But my mom was a great role model. She's still alive. She was a
Mm,
great, that's why we have to like, I forgive her and some of the things that she said to me when I was younger, but I'm sure I was outspoken, Cynthia.
yeah.
Sorry, that's kind of how I was
Yeah.
because
Forgiveness is really a big part of resilience, isn't it?
yes, you have to.
Forgiveness, you have to learn how to forgive, and that's one of the hardest things we have to learn in life, how to forgive those, as you say, who aren't conscious, who aren't aware that they're even harassing or trespassing or
They
stepping.
don't. I think that's what bullies, right? Bullies that are out there then and now, for some reason, they're suppressing something and taking it. Maybe they're jealous of that other person and they're trying to, I don't know. I'm not a psychotherapist, but something is not right. Why are they picking on someone else?
Right,
And
exactly.
I wasn't really, I was bullied. I think it's normal for kids to have some bulliness. I'm sure I probably did it to somebody else I didn't realize. I just don't know. I
Right.
tried to be nice.
Well,
Um,
that's why I think therapy is so important for everybody because it helps us all recognize what's in the closet. We all have something in the closet. Whether it's insecurity, it's usually some form of insecurity or unworthiness. We all deal with unworthiness. And I think that's what makes a bully is this unworthiness that comes out like a monster roaring out.
yeah, they definitely need some I shouldn't say some help. And I think that's why meditation is so critical now. I should say critical. It's important. It always has been. And the culture that I grew up in, it wasn't common to talk about. Lived on as a military brat, so they didn't talk about.
No meditation on the
No, it wasn't
honeybees.
normal. And I
Yeah.
should say normal. Now it is, and I'm glad it's weaved into our culture now. That is, I think, something that is so critical. And by the way, before asking about my mom became a psychologist. Okay.
Ah.
And she finally, when her third husband, who was the best thing ever, um, I was 17 when they got married, but he was the one that encouraged her. And so I think she needed that, and she helped deal not her her clients were usually like abused spouses, military spouses. That people think about that. So she did all that,
Mm.
and that was though she started all that when I was in college, right? So I didn't really wasn't around that aspect too much.
That's
But I had
probably because when people become psychologists, they tend to diagnose everybody in the family.
that's what she was doing. Like, thanks, mom. But I think she needed that, right? I mean, I think it helped her then, but she saw so much stuff being a military spouse. I shouldn't say stuff, but there's people don't realize that's why I didn't want to be married to someone who was an active military person because lived that as a child.
Mm. Yeah.
And I,
It's like that was probably an extreme version of masculinity,
yes,
right?
it
Military is
was. And
masculinity taken to the nth degree.
it was. And I'm so glad my mom, but she was, after she got her psychology, she was much calmer, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I thought she was much calmer because she found her purpose.
Yeah.
And I've never seen my mom actually do meditation, but it kind of is the way. I'm sure she does it, but she did it more. A psychotherapist is a little different than a psychologist, but
Mm.
it's meditation is like just so helpful. It just people think it's I don't know, some people need to think about it more, what the purpose is of it. And it doesn't have to be like an hour a day, right? Can you?
5 minutes a day. It can be just taking a breath and especially knowing how to take, there's a similarity between meditation and psychotherapy because both of them have an observer quality. The psychotherapist is observing, they're holding, there can be a lot of emotion in the room, but the psychotherapist is observing and is okay with any level of emotion. And the meditator is the same, right? When you're meditating, you're observing emotion, you're observing the ups and downs on the roller coaster. And so there's a little bit of detachment and equanimity that comes from both of those, being a meditator and a psychotherapist. And actually, meditating saved my life because I think that was probably the most important thing that happened to me was the very first meditation retreat I went on. The meditation teacher said, okay, imagine a situation where you're really activated and very upset, and you're in that situation, you're feeling all these feelings. And I had a 2-year-old at the time who was tantruming and demanding and screaming, and I was totally flustered. And he said, leave the room, go outside, and find a person outside, whether it's Mother Teresa or the Virgin Mary or the Buddha, Kuan Yin, become that and walk back into the room. And I walked back into the room as Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion, and everything was completely different. I was completely relaxed. I was able to be with my son. It changed my life. It introduced something to me that I had been completely unaware of before. So I that was Jack Cornfield, and if anyone out here knows Jack Cornfield, he's a fabulous Buddhist meditation teacher.
I've heard of his name. I started doing yoga. I think after I have so many health issues. It's probably related to all this other stuff. But I started implementing that yoga and things like that, and just it was just so helpful. Even though I still like to run, I do. I'm what is the word? When it's the opposite, yin and yang. I
Uh,
implement that in my life because I still want to be that those are good, happy endorphins I get for money, but then the yoga helps me a lot. And
Great.
I think we just need to be open to that and then find the best way to do it. I've done some yoga stuff like at the YMCA a long time ago, but that was really kind of cool.
Mhm.
To do it in a group. I should say cool. It was really a meditation because you're not just the only human being there.
Yeah. I love how you're talking about this integrating the yin and the yang because you've got the drive, you've got the competitive, you've got the running, you've got the aerobic. You know, you got to push yourself to do that, but then you're also nurturing that inner, relaxing, meditative, peaceful, contemplative place. And I feel like that is so important. If we get out of balance on those two, we can really find ourselves in trouble. So I love that you've got running and yoga going on in your
I
life.
know it's people like Bridget is different, but you know, because I'm a good runner, but I don't do more than like 3 or 6 miles. You know what I'm saying? It's just at my age, I'm going to be 60 soon. I know it's not good for my body. I mean, you have to think about that too. And then the stretching is what yoga, it just helps you calm your mind and your body.
Your nervous system,
It
calming your
it
nervous
does.
system. And that is so important right now for all of us to learn how to calm our nervous systems because we jack each other up. We
Yes, we do.
get
And
into conversations and we jack each other up. And that's
I've learned too, I cut out caffeine.
uh,
Because I haven't had caffeine and I can't drink coffee. People are like, you need to drink coffee, it's good for you. But I know my body, Cynthia. I
mhm,
will go run uh 12 miles. You know what I'm saying? Because I
yeah,
naturally have high metabolism. That's how my body is wired. And I think that's why people like me need to do this to the yin and yang. That's when I learned. I don't remember which but I think I took a certification course in like nutrition, integrative nutrition, and that's how I learned about. I'm like, oh, this is so cool because it helped. I just, we just don't talk about it. We're always talking about like the competitive side of stuff, but what about we need to make it normal to calm down a little bit.
to calm your nervous system and to eat healthy and to know what is healthy. And
Yes,
actually, it's probably because you had so many health issues that you learned to do that, right? You learned to listen to your body. You learned what
yes,
the body was telling you. Don't run more than 6 miles. Eat
right,
healthy. Don't eat that particular food. It's not good for you. Don't drink caffeine.
right. It's not. It's based on also they called me the zebra among horses because I was doing things right.
Mm,
Yeah. And it was because my issue was environmental exposure to stuff when I was younger. That's what because I'm also curious and I think it's important to also ask questions. And I learned to do that properly, being a woman in a man's world, right?
yeah.
To try to be respectful. But I think that's why I think the healthcare system, they're incorporating all this stuff that you're doing now.
Yep.
It's my understanding that like acupuncture is another thing they're implementing for cancer people. And
I do hypnosis, and they're implementing that into Kaiser. Kaiser is using a lot of hypnosis.
see,
It's really helpful because I do a lot of hypnosis for surgery because before you go into surgery, if you can implant a message and a visualization that it's going to be good, there's going to be a good outcome, you can trust your doctors, then people don't go into surgery with an activated nervous system, which
yeah,
helps them.
I love that. I mean, that is so good that you're doing that because I've been in the cancer ward a couple times. I mean, I call it the cancer ward, shouldn't say that, but it's unexpected stuff. It's because again, I listen to my instinct and I'm like asking questions, what is going, and then that's kind of I believe in finding things sooner rather than later. And
Right,
then the doctors were happy that I healed really well because I did the integrative stuff. And
great.
and some people ask me, I can't believe you're that old, Bridget. I'm like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I I drink a lot of water. That's one of I don't drink coffee, even though some people think it's good for you. It's not good for my body.
Yeah, you
And then
listen
like
to yourself.
and doing the yin and yang and trying to incorporate, I think listening to other people, right? Is just so connecting with other humans is important. I know some people you got to be alone, but I'm just
Mm.
blabbing. I think that's what you've learned with your acting. You learned so much from that, and then you became a psychotherapist, and now let's kind of weave back to your book, your dancing on coals. I like that idea of that title.
Mm.
And so what that was released in, I think in March of this year.
March of this year. Yeah, and the title comes from a Buddhist poem. Anne Waldman is a poet, and she wrote a poem called Sleeping with the Hungry Ghost. And the hungry ghost in Buddhism is that part of us that is never satisfied, that's always craving, that needs something more, that can't get enough. And so her poem goes, sexy ghost, a performer, a demon, a gadfly, to never have enough, be enough, get enough, dancing on coals.
Oh, that is so I like poems like that because it does make you pause and think and I think that's that kind of thing you're doing is reminding people to slow down.
Right.
And that's something especially in our different phase in life. You call it a chapter or a phase in life? I'm not sure what you want to call it. A
Yeah,
chapter.
there's a lot of chapters and several phases. You could break it down any way you want to. Yeah.
Right. And I think
Writing about it is a great way to integrate it and metabolize it.
that's true. I like the wisdom that you're sharing based on your experiences. And that is just, I think you're quite an inspiration. And I'm glad that you're, you learned how to help other people with being a mental health counselor because that is something that your book is going to help people learn a lot. We're going to learn from that. And I love reading books, by the way, because it makes you pause and think rather than looking at a video. That's just how I think that's better for our brains. Maybe it's just for my brain, but you're going to read it and you're going to give people some good insights.
Hopefully some inspiration, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
that's
we're
what it
always looking
is.
for inspiration.
And I just love what you're doing. I'm trying to think, how many years were you a health counselor before you wrote this book? I'm just curious.
Well, I started writing the book about 10 years ago, so I had been a counselor I was for 25 years. So I had been for about 15 years at that point.
And see, if some people are afraid to write a book, but you did it and you had to write the thoughts down and put it all together. And that is, I encourage people to write. You don't have to publish it. You don't have to, but at least it's a legacy if you have a family for them to read later.
Yes, it's so important and it's so good for the soul to write. Write your life, write your feelings, write what you need help with. It's always useful. Journaling alone is incredibly useful for healing.
That's so true. And I always journal. I wasn't consistent when I was younger, but I did find my my parents were it was in a box, a diary that
Oh,
I was like 8 when I started it. But
wow.
I think I've always been that way for some and again, it's embracing, me. I knew I had to get it out of there.
Well, Bridget, you've got a book in you.
Right. I've written a couple, but it was my first one was based on after the last cancer, and it was my blog, all this content stuff that I'm like, oh, there's a theme to it, and
Oh,
that's how the first book was formed called Real Things, and then
oh,
this podcast is an offshoot of that, but it
okay.
was actually my sons, Cynthia, that encouraged their mother to do this because they're like, "Mom, you're a really good writer."
Oh,
And
great.
they joke when they were young that I was a grammar Nazi, but I'm just kidding. When you had to help your kids with their writing assignments, they wanted me to look at it before they turned it in. And I would always, but I think that's just always ingrained in you know, in me, my nature on how to communicate properly with people. I think
Yeah,
that's something because I probably had some bad responses to people and, we just I don't know. It it's just you gotta bring some light to everybody's life, right? Some shape or form.
exactly. That's a great motto. Bring some light to everybody's life.
Right. You have to be a positive role model, and I think that's what you're doing for everybody. So how many I know you mentioned you had you're a mother. How many children?
I have two kids. They're both local in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I have one grandson who I love.
I bet. Yeah, I think that is so great. I think I've been to the San Francisco area a few times, and the last time was we went to a friend of ours. Our son got married, but it was before COVID, so I haven't been to California since then. But I mean, I've traveled my car mostly, but then I only flew to France, see my family over there too.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
I think I appreciate that too, the history of everything. I think
Mhm.
that is something we should learn about too. And I think meditating can help you think about your past, which is your history, and how
In
to,
other countries, you're talking about France and having family in France. There, we can learn so much from other cultures and other countries and other languages.
yes,
We learn to think outside our own culture, outside our own small models. It's really important.
it is. And I think I've traveled a lot back in the day in the corporate world. I did travel a lot and I appreciated all that. And I think people knew I learned to be I should say a chameleon, but because I was in like the North, I had to not talk with a Southern accent. And you know
Huh.
what I'm saying? And my mother was French and she taught me English. And so I said things backwards a little bit. So I learned how to adapt because of that. And that's
Mhm.
why people are like, oh, where are you from? Well, your language is so bland. Well, they didn't say bland, but I learned to try to mimic them. And
Yeah.
it's all good. So
We want to learn how to adapt, and we also want to learn how to really be fully ourselves. I think
yes,
both are important, especially as women, because as women, we can over adapt. And it's important to
I don't want
just
to
say,
blend
I'm
in
going to
too
be
much.
fully myself. I'm going to be every part of myself.
I
And
think
I encourage all women to do that. Be wholly yourself. Don't
that's
be
true.
made small. Don't fit in. Don't hide your voice. Don't hide your light.
That's kinda yeah, that explains a lot of women, and then I learned that. That was my phase of life. I'm like, "Screw this." After my cancer and stuff, I'm like, I didn't use a I joke a lot that I cuss, but my mom, think about it, she cussed people don't realize how much French people cuss.
Uh-huh.
Do, but they don't say it in the English way, so I saw that. My mom was just, a great she was a great light. She really for her kids, raising them during that it was kind of tumultuous time in the 60s and 70s having kids here in the US, as you know. And
Cancer will teach you to be yourself. It
oh
will.
yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Yes,
I had a bout of cancer myself, and it was the biggest teacher I ever had in terms of boundaries, setting boundaries, and saying you can't take care of everybody else right now.
correct.
You have got to do your own healing. It's a great
Or
teacher.
yeah, remember people reaching out to me to come get this nice corporate job, and I was going through cancer. I'm like, no, my health is more important. Sorry,
Yes.
I had to be here for my family. Oh, I
Yeah.
mean, the future was my sons were like my life. I'm like, okay, it's funny that I grew up in the masculine world and I have two sons. I was meant to be a boy mom,
Yeah. A lot
but
of
they're
testosterone in your world.
yeah, like Lord help. Maybe that's why I still run. No, but they're really kind. I'm just I think because they're they're good kids. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't say kids. They're men, but they're compassionate. And that's what we wanted to teach them how they
Beautiful.
need to help. You know, in they're just so I'm just so grateful for them. So, for those that are listening, what is the one takeaway for them on our conversation and what you're sharing? What is one takeaway for the listeners?
I would say the takeaway for that I would like to impart is be all of yourself. Don't just be part of yourself. Let all of the parts of yourself that need to be expressed be expressed. And if you feel a pivot happening in your midlife or at any point in your life, if there's a little voice inside that says, I need to do this thing that I haven't done yet, go ahead and do that thing and express yourself and find, mostly, I would say, listen to your inner knowing, because we all have a place within us of inner knowing. And it's so reliable and it's so strong and it's so true. And if you can access that place in yourself and really listen to it and heed its call, it will show you the path.
I love that. It's also, I was thinking, keep it simple. That's that's kind of how I think we try to do too many things too, as women especially. But
Mhm.
I've learned that too. And yeah, be yourself. That is so important. Embrace it because life is short, right? And so where can people learn more about you to connect with you, Cynthia?
My website is cynthiamorewrites.com, WRITES. You can email me at cynthiamorewrites@gmail.com. And I welcome anyone who wants to communicate with me or buy my book. I have two books out. I have one on Amazon and one in bookstores and on Amazon. And I welcome any feedback.
I love this. And for those that are listening, I will include the links that she mentioned in the description. This is very enlightening, and I love to connect with people like you, Cynthia. You just made my morning. It's morning here, morning for you too. We're recording, right?
Morning for me too. Lovely to connect with you, Bridget.
Thank you again, and thanks for listening, everybody.